My people, part 4 is here, and trust me, you must watch to the end. Tonight, the line between the living and the dead will blur even more, and Amina will be forced to make a choice that no woman should ever have to make. Will she follow Chika to Anambra State, or will she walk away from the marriage? Watch to the end to find out Amina's fate. The following morning, Amina tried to push away the heaviness from the night before and carried on with her day. She dropped her younger children at school,
Okay, kids, seatbelts on. We're off to school.
kissed them quickly, and went about her errands. Around midday, her phone rang sharply. The number flashing on the screen was from Chidimma's school. Amina's heart skipped. Calls from school rarely carried good news. She answered quickly, "Hello? This is Amina." On the other end, the voice of Chidimma's teacher trembled with urgency.
Madam, please come quickly. Chidimma, she fainted during class. We've rushed her to the sick bay.
Amina's breath caught in her throat. Fainted? My daughter fainted. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. The teacher continued, "Yes, madam. She just slumped while reading. Please hurry." Without a second thought, Amina grabbed her handbag and dashed out.
God protect my daughter for me. Please heal her for me.
On the way, tears blurred her vision. "God, not my child. Please, not Chidimma," she cried under her breath, clutching her chest. Memories of Chidimma's laughter, her bright eyes, and her innocent voice filled her heart. She couldn't bear the thought of losing her. By the time Amina reached the school, a crowd of teachers and students had gathered around the sick bay door. Whispers filled the air, and all eyes turned to her as she pushed her way inside. Amina burst into the sick bay and saw Chidimma lying weak on the bed, her uniform slightly rumpled, sweat glistening on her forehead. Her small chest rose and fell rapidly as if she had been running. "Mummy." Chidimma's lips trembled as she opened her eyes slowly. Her tiny fingers reached for Amina's hand. "Yes, my love, I'm here." "Don't worry, you'll be fine," Amina whispered, brushing her daughter's damp hair away from her face. But Chidimma's voice shook with fear. "Mummy, I'm seeing shadows. They're moving around me. They're dragging me to somewhere I don't understand." Amina's heart nearly stopped. She clutched her daughter tightly. "What shadows?" "My baby, you're safe. Nothing will drag you anywhere," she said, though her voice cracked with worry. The teacher standing nearby gasped. "She said the same thing before she fainted in class, madam. We thought it was just shock, but she keeps repeating it." Amina's eyes darted around the room, suddenly feeling a chill crawl up her spine. The walls of the sick bay seemed to close in, and the air grew heavy as if unseen eyes were watching. "God, what is this again?" Amina whispered under her breath, holding her daughter tighter, praying the shadows she spoke of were only feverish visions, but deep down, she feared it was something more. Immediately, Amina grabbed her phone with trembling hands and dialed Chika's number. Her voice shook as soon as he answered. "Chika, it's Chidimma. She fainted in school. She said something is dragging her. Shadows. Dragging her to a place she doesn't understand." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, the kind that made Amina's heart beat faster. Then Chika's voice came, calm but heavy with urgency. "Amina, don't panic. Bring Chidimma home right now. Don't let her stay there another minute." "But Chika," Amina tried to explain further, her eyes darting nervously around the sick bay. "No, Amina," Chika interrupted, his tone firm, almost commanding. "Bring her home immediately. Whatever this is, it's not ordinary. I need her close to us. Only then can I know what to do." Amina felt her legs grow weak. She looked down at Chidimma, who was still whispering about shadows moving in the corners of the room. Her small body shivered as if touched by invisible hands. Clutching her phone, Amina muttered, "Okay, I'll bring her home." She wrapped her arms around her daughter, determined to protect her from whatever darkness was trying to reach her. Amina carried Chidimma home in haste. The moment they stepped into the compound, the little girl wriggled free from her mother's arms and ran straight to her father. "Daddy," she cried, her face pale and frightened. Chika knelt and held her tightly. As she tried to speak, he raised his hand gently and said, I know you fainted again, my daughter." Amina froze. She hadn't told him everything yet, not the details of what Chidimma had whispered about the shadows. Her heart pounded. How did he already know? Chidimma blinked at him with wide eyes. Daddy, when I closed my eyes, I saw dark hands. They were pulling me to a place I don't understand. Chika's grip on her tightened. His eyes glistened with something Amina could not read. Pain, fear, or guilt. I told you, Amina, he said softly, still holding Chidimma. Some battles are not of this world. She is seeing what ordinary eyes cannot see. Amina's lips trembled. She wanted to ask him how he knew all this, but her throat locked in fear. Instead, she whispered, Chica, what exactly is happening to our daughter? Without answering Amina's trembling question, Chika lifted his right hand and began to mutter strange words under his breath. The air around them felt heavy, as though unseen forces had gathered to listen. He spat lightly into his palm, rubbed his hands together, and pressed his palm gently on Chidimma's face. Wake, my daughter, he whispered in a voice that carried both authority and sorrow. Almost immediately, Chidimma gasped, her eyes snapping wide open. Her lips trembled, and she clung to her father's chest as if returning from a long journey. Daddy, she whispered faintly. Amina staggered backward, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. She had just seen her husband, her ghostly husband, bring their daughter back to life with words no mortal should know. Tears rolled down Amina's cheeks, not from relief alone, but from fear. Chica, her voice cracked. What are you? Chika looked at her, his eyes dark with secrets. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held Chidimma tighter and said, some things are better left unsaid, Amina. For your safety and theirs. Amina gently carried Chidimma into her room, tucking her into bed. She kissed her forehead and whispered, sleep, my child. You're safe now. But inside, her heart thundered with questions she could no longer suppress. When she closed the door, she turned back to the sitting room where Chika stood, his shadow stretching unnaturally long against the wall. The silence between them was so heavy it seemed to choke the air. Amina's eyes burned with both love and fear. Chika, she said firmly, her voice trembling but determined, I need you to tell me the truth. Who are you really? Are you my husband, or are you something else? Chika froze, his lips parting but no words coming out. His chest rose and fell as though he carried the weight of centuries. His eyes flickered with something unearthly, something he had tried so hard to hide. Amina took a step closer, tears welling in her eyes. Don't lie to me anymore. I saw things, Chika, things a living man cannot do. Our daughter saw shadows, and I know you're not ordinary. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Chika finally spoke, his voice low and haunting. Amina, the truth you seek may destroy everything you love. Are you ready to hear it? Chika's eyes glistened as Amina's trembling words filled the room. You don't need to ask who I am, he said slowly, his voice heavy like a drumbeat. You already know. Amina's lips quivered. She stepped back, her fists clenched by her sides. Then do you want to kill me and my children? She cried, her voice cracking. Go if you want to go, but don't take me and my children with you. Those words pierced Chika's heart like a spear. He stumbled backward slightly, his face twisting with pain. Not the pain of anger, but the pain of a wounded soul. His eyes dimmed as though the light inside him was fading. Amina, his voice trembled, breaking for the first time. I have never and will never harm you or our children. You are my anchor, my world, my only reason for still standing between life and death. But Amina shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then tell me the truth, she pleaded. Tell me who you are. Tell me why shadows follow our daughter. Tell me why you live like this. Chika closed his eyes, his shoulders trembling. If I tell you, you can never go back to the life you knew. And you may never forgive me, he whispered. Amina's breath hitched. The room felt colder, heavier. She stared at him, her heart torn between fear and love. Then show me, she said quietly. If you can't tell me, show me. Chika opened his eyes. For a heartbeat, something ancient flickered there, something not of this world. He took a step toward her, then stopped as if fighting an invisible force. Be careful what you wish for, Amina, he murmured. Some truths cannot be unseen. And with that, the lights flickered once, then steadied, leaving an ominous silence in the room. That night, after the heavy exchange with Amina, the house grew silent. Amina wept herself into a restless sleep, her heart torn apart by confusion and fear. Chika sat on the edge of the bed, watching her breathe. His eyes lingered on her face with sorrow and longing. He knew she was breaking, and he could not allow the shadows to claim her. Quietly, he rose, slipped out of the house, and made his way into the cold night. His steps carried him toward the cemetery, where the air grew heavy and thick with unseen forces. The guardian of the cemetery stood waiting, cloaked in mist, his hollow eyes piercing the darkness. "You have come again, Chika," the guardian's voice echoed. "But this time, not for counsel, you come in desperation." Chika bowed his head, his voice trembling. "Guardian, my family is unraveling. My wife suspects. My daughter sees shadows. My son wakes screaming at night. I am losing them." The guardian stepped forward, the earth rumbling under his feet. "It is because you have overstayed your welcome here in Tanzania," he declared. "The dead and the living cannot coexist without consequence. You have lingered too long, Chika." Chika's chest tightened. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice cracking. The guardian raised his hand, and in it appeared an ancient hourglass. Its sand glowed with an eerie light, trickling downward at a steady pace. "Take your wife back to Nigeria," the guardian commanded. "Return her to your roots before the shadow of death claims her and your children." The guardian's hollow eyes darkened as he thrust the hourglass toward Chika. "The time starts now." The sand poured faster than natural, each grain a heartbeat closer to the end. Chika's breath caught in his throat, his hands trembling as he accepted the hourglass. He looked back toward the road leading home. His family was sleeping in fragile peace, but the clock of death had begun. That night, as Amina tossed in her troubled sleep, she found herself standing in a vast open field, covered in mist. From the distance, her late mother slowly walked toward her, dressed in the same wrapper she was buried with. "Mama," Amina whispered, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mama, I am tired. I don't know what to do anymore." Her mother's eyes, calm yet filled with sorrow, locked onto hers. "Don't be confused, my daughter," she said softly. "I told you before, some secrets are better left unsaid. Let the sleeping dog lie." "But Mama," Amina cried, "everything is falling apart. The children are suffering, and I feel like my marriage is crumbling. I don't understand who my husband truly is." Her mother raised her hand and touched Amina's cheek gently. "Do not worry. I will protect you and your children from any evil that lurks in the shadows. Trust me, my daughter, you are not alone." Suddenly, the mist thickened and her mother's image began to fade. "Mama, don't leave me," Amina shouted, reaching out desperately. But her mother's voice echoed faintly, "Be strong." Immediately, Amina gasped and opened her eyes. Her heart pounded as beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. She sat up and froze. Right there beside her on the bed, Chika was sitting silently, staring at her. His eyes glistened strangely in the dim light of the room. Chika leaned closer, his voice low but firm, carrying an unusual calmness that unsettled Amina. "Amina," he said, "we are going to Nigeria." Amina's eyes widened. She blinked rapidly, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What? You mean we are going to Nigeria?" "Yes," Chika replied, his gaze steady, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It is time." Amina's hands trembled slightly as she clutched the bedsheet. Her heart raced. She remembered the warnings from Chidimma and her mother's dream. Yet she forced a small, cautious smile. "Please give me time," she said softly. "Time to gather myself and the children together." Chika's lips curved faintly, almost as though he saw through her hesitation. He nodded slowly. "Take the time you need. But don't delay too long, Amina. The shadows do not wait." The moment Chika stepped out of the room, Amina reached for her phone with trembling hands. She dialed Mzijuma's number, her voice breaking as soon as he answered. "Mzi, it's happening. Chika said we are going to Nigeria." There was silence on the other end, then a deep sigh. "Amina," Mzijuma said, his voice heavy with caution. "Get ready to face the reality. What you have been afraid of is about to unfold." Amina pressed her palm against her chest, struggling to steady her breath. What do you mean by reality, Mzee? Tell me, am I going to lose my husband? You may not see your husband again, Mzee Juma said carefully, or something strange may happen to him. The land of the living and the dead cannot walk together forever. One must give way. Tears pooled in Amina's eyes, her grip on the phone tightening. So what should I do? Should I refuse to go with him? No, Mzee Juma answered firmly. Go with him. But keep your eyes open. Whatever happens, keep me updated. I will guide you through. Just remember, you are not alone in this battle. Later that night, Amina gathered courage and asked, Chika, are we not going to sell our building? What about the staff? What shall we do with them? Chika smiled faintly, a smile that only deepened Amina's unease. He leaned closer and whispered, when we are going to Nigeria, I will show you how this house really looks like. Amina's heart skipped a beat. She searched his eyes for clarity, but he only placed his hand gently on hers and added, for the sake of your sanity, don't worry. Some truths are better left unseen until the right time. On the night before their journey, the house was quiet, carrying an air of both fear and anticipation. Amina stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew for the family's last meal in Tanzania, her mind racing with unanswered questions. Suddenly, she felt strong arms wrap around her waist from behind. Chika's voice came softly against her ear. Amina, I love you. I will always love you. His words sent a shiver through her, both of longing and of dread. Before she could respond, Chika turned her around, his lips capturing hers with passion. In that moment, Amina forgot every fear, every suspicion, every whisper of doubt. They gave themselves to each other right there in the kitchen, making love like never before, as though it was their last night together on earth. When it was over, Amina leaned against his chest, breathing heavily. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe, but deep inside, she knew it was only an illusion. Amina was happy. She forgot in a moment that her husband was a ghost. The warmth of his embrace, the way his lips touched hers, felt so real that she drowned in the illusion of normalcy. Her heart raced as if she was once again a young bride in the arms of her beloved. For that moment, there was no fear, no doubt, no whispers of death. Only the tender love she thought she had lost forever. Chika's touch was firm yet gentle, his presence both calming and electrifying. Amina held on tightly, unwilling to let go, as though releasing him would shatter the fragile dream she was living in. The aroma of the food she was cooking still lingered in the kitchen, but it no longer mattered. The world outside their embrace faded. The kitchen became their universe, filled with passion and unspoken promises. Tears of joy welled up in Amina's eyes as she whispered, if this is a dream, let me never wake up. Chika smiled faintly, though behind that smile lay a hidden sorrow only he could feel. Chika brushed a strand of hair from Amina's face and kissed her forehead. No matter what tomorrow brings, he whispered, remember that my love will never die. Amina smiled through her tears, holding him tightly, afraid that if she loosened her grip, he might vanish into thin air. They sat together on the kitchen floor after their passion, leaning against each other like two souls who had conquered the world. The food remained half-cooked, but their hearts were full. When Amina finally stood up, she looked into his eyes and said, promise me, Chika, that tomorrow nothing will take you away from me. Chika hesitated for a moment, then forced a smile. I promise I will be by your side. But remember what I always say, love is stronger than anything, even death. They finished their meal quietly, savoring each bite as though it was their last supper together. The children slept peacefully in their rooms, unaware of the storm hanging over their parents. That night, Amina lay in bed, listening to Chika's steady breathing. She rested her head on his chest, trying to memorize the rhythm of his heartbeat, afraid it might fade away. Sleep came slowly to her eyes. She dreamed of them walking hand in hand through the streets of Nigeria, smiling, laughing, free from every fear and shadow. When morning came, the air was unusually cold. Amina woke first and found Chika already dressed, his eyes fixed on the window as though he could see far into the unseen world. Are you ready? He asked softly, turning to her. Amina nodded, her heart pounding, as she knew this day would mark the beginning of either a miracle or a farewell. That morning, just as Amina was dressing the children, the phone rang. She rushed to answer, only to hear the airline official inform her that their flight had been postponed to the following week. Her face turned pale as she gripped the phone tightly. "What? You mean we are still going to wait another week?" she asked, her voice trembling. The official apologized, explaining that unexpected technical issues had grounded the plane and all passengers had been rescheduled. Amina dropped the call and slowly turned to Chika, her heart heavy. "Chika, they postponed the flight. We have to wait another week." Chika's jaw tightened, but he tried to remain calm. "Amina, don't panic. Maybe this is how it's meant to be. We just have to be careful until then." Amina shook her head in frustration. "Careful? Every day we stay here feels like the shadow of death is getting closer. Didn't the guardian of the cemetery say time was running out?" Chika pulled her close, lowering his voice so the children wouldn't hear. "Yes, he did. But panicking won't save us. We must endure this week and prepare ourselves." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "What if something happens before then? What if I lose you?" He cupped her face gently. "You won't lose me, Amina. Not now, not ever. This week will test us, but we will pass the test." Amina nodded weakly, though deep inside, she feared that fate had already begun its countdown. As the days passed slowly, Amina couldn't shake the thought from her mind. She began to suspect that Chika himself might be manipulating their journey, creating reasons for delay so they would never leave Tanzania. Late at night, when the children were asleep, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her husband. What if he doesn't want us to go? What if he wants us trapped here forever? She remembered the guardian's warning. The dead and the living could not dwell together. What if Chika knows this and is trying to stop me from leaving? The thought made her chest tighten. Every time she looked at him, he smiled warmly, touched her gently, and spoke with love. Yet beneath his tender words, Amina felt a shadow lurking. One afternoon, while clearing the sitting room, she overheard Chika murmuring strange words under his breath. His eyes were closed, his palms raised, as though he was invoking something unseen. Her heart raced, and she stepped back quickly before he noticed. Is he the one keeping us here? That night, she couldn't bring herself to sleep beside him. She lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying his words over and over. When Chika reached for her hand, she pulled away slightly, pretending to shift in her sleep. Doubt filled her soul. "God," she whispered under her breath, "show me the truth about this man I call my husband. Am I safe, or am I already walking in the shadows?" The silence of the night answered with a heavy stillness, leaving Amina more troubled than ever. The following morning, Amina walked quietly into their garden. On the night before their journey, the house was quiet, carrying an air of both fear and anticipation. The dew still clung to the leaves, and the air carried the soft scent of flowers, but her heart was heavy with unease. She sat on a wooden bench beneath the mango tree, her hands folded tightly on her lap. Memories of how her life used to be, peaceful, simple, and full of dreams, flashed in her mind. Now everything seemed like a puzzle she could not solve. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Is this really my destiny? To live with a man who walks between the living and the dead? Or am I being punished for something I do not understand?" A gentle breeze brushed across her face, almost like a hand wiping her tears. For a moment, she felt her mother's presence again, as though the spirit of the woman she had lost was sitting beside her, listening. Amina picked a small flower from the garden and held it close to her chest. "Mama," she murmured softly, "I need strength. I don't know if I should run or stay. If I go to Nigeria, will it save us or destroy us?" Just then, a shadow moved across the garden path. Amina froze, clutching the flower tighter. Slowly, she lifted her eyes, only to see someone watching her from a distance. It was not Chika. The figure stood still, half hidden by the morning mist, and Amina's heart pounded as she realized she was not alone in the garden. As Amina wiped her tears, the shadow moved closer, and then a familiar voice broke the silence. "My darling Amina," Chika said softly, stepping out of the mist. She turned sharply, her heart skipping a beat. He walked toward her with calm eyes, his face full of tenderness. I know what you are thinking, he whispered, but I can't harm you. You are my world, Amina. He knelt before her and gently took her hands. I guess this delay is for our good. Do you remember this garden? He asked, his voice trembling with both sadness and warmth. Amina blinked through her tears, trying to steady her heart. Yes, she said softly, a smile tugging at her lips despite the confusion in her soul. Chika smiled faintly. This is where I first proposed to you, where I begged you to be my wife, to make me the happiest man alive. Amina's smile grew wider as memories of that day came rushing back. The flowers, the laughter, the promises of forever. She whispered, I remember. Without another word, Chika pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, as if sealing a vow all over again. They forgot their worries in that moment. The garden, the morning air, the scent of flowers, all of it became their witness. He caressed her face, whispered how much he loved her, and Amina let herself drown in his embrace. There in the garden, under the same tree where their love story began, they made love again. Passionate, desperate, and full of unspoken fears. For a moment, Amina forgot that her husband was a ghost. For a moment, she believed she had him back completely. In the days that followed, Amina began to feel something she thought she had lost. Love. Chika's touch, his gentle words, and the way he looked at her as though she was his entire world began to overwhelm her heart. Each time he held her, she forgot the whispers of death, the warnings of Chidimma, and even the terrifying words of the grave guardian. Her heart began to soften again. At night, when he drew her close and whispered, You are my only woman, my forever, Amina's fears melted like wax in fire. The thought of going to Nigeria no longer filled her with hope. It filled her with dread. She did not want to lose him. She did not want to return only to face the truth that could tear them apart forever. One night, as they lay together, Amina whispered, Maybe we don't have to go, Chika. Maybe we can just stay here and forget everything. Her words shocked even her. Deep down, she knew she was falling again, falling helplessly in love with the very man she feared was no longer alive. Chika brushed aside her fears with a tender smile. Let's not talk about that now, my love. Let's enjoy this moment, he whispered, his voice deep and soothing. Amina nodded, feeling her heart racing faster than before. She rose and remembered she had left her phone inside her car. Quietly, she walked across the compound toward it. Unaware that Chika had followed her, she opened the car door and bent to pick her phone from the seat. Suddenly, strong but gentle arms wrapped around her from behind. Before she could speak, Chika's lips pressed against hers, burning with passion. The heat of his kiss silenced every thought in her mind. In that hidden corner under the night sky, with only the car as their witness, they gave in to their longing once again. The car rocked slightly as their love deepened, and for that moment Amina forgot everything. The ghostly truth, the warnings, the fear of Nigeria. She only remembered that she was love. The following morning, Amina woke up with mixed feelings. She looked at Chika sleeping peacefully beside her, his hand still resting on her waist. For a moment, she thought of pretending nothing was wrong, but then the words of Chidimma echoed in her mind. Get ready to face the reality once you step into Nigeria. She quietly got out of bed, went to the balcony, and stared at the rising sun. Her heart was torn between two worlds, the man who made her feel loved like never before, and the terrifying truth that he was no ordinary man. While lost in her thoughts, later that day, while preparing breakfast, Amina's phone rang. It was Chidimma. His voice was stern and heavy. Amina, the time is running out. Has Chika set the date for Nigeria? Amina hesitated before answering, glancing at her husband, who was in the living room with the children. Yes, he said we would go once the flight is ready. Chidimma sighed deeply on the phone. Be strong, my daughter. The shadows are already reaching for your children. If you delay too long, you may lose them before you even set foot in Nigeria. That night, when the house was quiet and the children were fast asleep, Chika sat alone in the parlor. He leaned back on the sofa, pretending to be lost in deep thought. The room was dimly lit, and the silence carried an uneasy weight. Amina, restless and unable to sleep, stepped out of their bedroom. She found her husband in the parlor, staring blankly as though he were somewhere else in his mind. "Chica," she whispered softly, "why aren't you in bed?" Before she could say another word, Chica rose to his feet and moved towards her. Without warning, he grabbed her gently but firmly, pulling her into his arms. He kissed her passionately, as if trying to silence the storm of doubts in her heart. Amina melted into his embrace, her breath quickening. He held her face in his hands, whispering, "Amina, you are my life. Nothing else matters when I'm with you." His words were like fire, breaking down the wall of fear that she had built around herself. They sank into the sofa, lost in each other. Chica's touch was overwhelming, his love fierce and consuming. Amina forgot, just for that moment, the shadows, the warnings, and the whispers of the grave. All she knew was the man she loved was holding her like he never wanted to let go. The night grew darker and their love burned brighter. When it was over, Amina lay in his arms, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. Was this love a blessing, or a curse she could never escape? The following morning, as the sun filtered gently through the curtains, Amina sat on the edge of the bed watching Chica dress. Her thoughts were heavy, and curiosity pressed hard on her chest. She finally asked, "Chica, why the sudden love? You have made love to me in places, and in ways you never have before. Almost everywhere we go, you want me. What has changed?" Chica paused, turning slowly to look at her. His lips curved into a faint smile, but his eyes held a seriousness she could not ignore. "Amina," he said softly, "I told you before, this delay is for our good. Maybe God wants us to use this time to strengthen what we share before the journey ahead." Amina frowned slightly, still unconvinced. His touch, his words, his sudden passion. It all felt like a man who was holding on too tightly to something he feared losing. Her heart fluttered uneasily, torn between love and suspicion. Chica walked up to her and placed his hand on her cheek. "Don't question my love, Amina. Just enjoy it. Every moment with you matters more than you know." He kissed her forehead, leaving her both comforted and unsettled. The following morning, as the sun rose over the city, Amina prepared the children for the trip. Chica approached her quietly and gently rubbed her face. But as his hand passed over her skin, a strange shimmer appeared in her eyes. Amina looked around, and suddenly the mansion she had admired so much the day before seemed different. The walls flickered, the grand halls seemed hollow, and shadows danced where none should be. Her heart sank. It wasn't a mansion at all. It was a house of ghosts. Every servant, every helper she had trusted, every friendly face that greeted her smile, they were all ghosts. The reality hit her like a cold wind. Amina froze, clutching her children close. "Chica, what is happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Fear and disbelief surged through her, and she realized that all the love and wealth had been built on a foundation she had never imagined. Chica's eyes softened, but there was a weight to his gaze she had never seen before. "Amina, this house, these people, they are my world, my friends, and my protectors. You are safe, but you need to see the truth before we leave for Nigeria." Amina's mind raced. The children clung to her skirts, unaware of the chilling reality. She wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers, but the intensity of Chica's presence held her still. She realized that whatever awaited them in Nigeria might be far more terrifying than what she had just discovered. Her heart pounded. Was she ready to confront the full truth of her husband's world, or would the journey to Nigeria shatter everything she had ever believed? Immediately, they arrived in Nigeria. The air felt different, familiar, yet heavy with anticipation. Before heading to Anambra State, Chica turned to Amina with a calm intensity. "What happened today? Know that I love you," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. He handed Amina the directions to the family house, explaining carefully, so she wouldn't get lost. "Follow this, and you will reach safely," he said. He also gave her the family surname, and emphasized its importance, ensuring she understood the weight of tradition and responsibility. Amina paused, looking at him. "Won't you follow me?" she asked, concern and longing mixed in her voice. Chica smiled faintly. "Of course I will follow you," he said, his tone both reassuring and mysterious. But remember, everything I have told you. Forget nothing, Amina. Every word is a guide, a warning, and a promise. Amina nodded, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. She could feel the pull of the past and the unknown ahead. The journey to the family house in Anambra had begun, but what awaited them there would test every truth she had ever known. The car rolled through winding roads, the scenery changing from bustling streets to the serene villages of the east. Amina glanced at Chika, her mind spinning with questions she could not yet voice. Every mile brought her closer to answers and deeper into a world she was only beginning to understand. As the car reached the outskirts of Anambra, something strange happened. Chika's eyes glazed over, and a sudden confusion swept across his face. The roads he had known all his life seemed unfamiliar, and the landmarks faded like mist. Amina noticed immediately. "Chika, what's happening?" "Do you remember the way to the family house?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Chika shook his head slowly. I don't know," he murmured, his words barely audible. The firmness in his tone made Amina pause. This wasn't the usual teasing or mysterious act she had come to expect from him. Amina's heart pounded. She glanced at him, her mind racing. Was he pretending, or was something truly wrong? Every instinct screamed that he was hiding more than he was letting on, but something about his expression told her he wasn't pretending at all. The silence in the car grew heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Amina's thoughts tumbled. If Chika can't remember the house, what does that mean? Has his ghostly nature finally caught up to him here? Fear and anticipation gripped her. Amina leaned out of the car window, scanning the unfamiliar roads. She asked a few passers-by for directions, trying to remain calm. But inside, her heart raced with worry.
Excuse me, which road leads to Mama Chika's house?
Glancing back at Chika, expecting him to guide her. But Chika didn't move. He remained seated in the car, silent and distant, his gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the immediate world. His body seemed tense, as if he was struggling with something only he could feel. Amina's concern deepened. She realized that no matter how much she asked, Chika would not respond. The realization that he truly could not remember the road sent a shiver down her spine. She gritted her teeth, trying to steady her nerves. If he can't get us to the house, what else can he not do? The car rolled slowly forward, every turn bringing them closer to an unknown fate, and Amina couldn't shake the feeling that something terrifying was waiting at the family house. They finally arrived at the family house. Mama Chika and Ngozi were waiting in the compound, their faces a mix of surprise and concern. As Amina stepped out of the car with her children, Mama Chika suddenly collapsed, fainting to the ground. She shouted, "Iwa!" loudly, causing everyone nearby to rush forward in alarm. People from the compound quickly grabbed buckets of water and poured it over her, bringing her back to consciousness. Her eyes widened as she focused on Amina and the children. "I saw you in my dream," Mama Chika gasped, her voice trembling with emotion. "I saw you. Chika brought you and your children to me, just like this in my dream." Ngozi stood beside her mother, equally astonished, her eyes brimming with tears. "It was true, the dream was real," she whispered. The family's excitement and disbelief filled the compound, blending with the tension of the unknown surrounding Chika's strange state. The whole village was thrown into pandemonium. People rushed out of their homes, shouting and pointing, unable to believe what was unfolding before them. When Amina called out, "Chika is in the car," everyone turned toward the vehicle. Lo and behold, Chika was there, but something was terribly wrong. He had lost his memory. He could remember Amina and the children, but when Mama Chika and Ngozi called out to him, his expression was blank and confused. "Woman, I don't know you," he said coldly, his voice void of recognition. Amina's heart sank. She had never imagined that bringing him back home would result in this shocking loss. Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to steady herself, holding her children close. The villagers whispered among themselves, some fearful, some curious. They had never witnessed a man return from the dead with such selective memory, and the chaos in the compound only grew as Chika remained unaware of his mother and sister. Chika turned to Amina with a calm but distant look. Let's leave this place, he said quietly. Without waiting for a response, he guided her and the children out of the compound. Amina followed, her mind racing. Is he pretending? She wondered, clinging to the hope that this was some elaborate prank. They arrived at a nearby hotel and checked into a room. Amina faced him, frustration and suspicion in her eyes. Chika, what type of prank are you playing now? She demanded. Chika shook his head, his expression serious. My wife, I don't know these people, he said firmly. The words hit Amina like a cold wave, freezing her thoughts. In that moment, Amina remembered Mzee Juma's warning. Once you go to Nigeria, you may not see Chika the way you know him. Be ready to face the unimaginable. The weight of those words settled over her like a heavy shadow. That night, Chika handed Amina a substantial amount of money. Use this to secure something for us, he said quietly, leaving her to decide how to spend it. Luckily for Amina, she managed to buy a very large mansion, reminiscent of the one they had in Tanzania. It was spacious, luxurious, and stood out in the neighborhood. In less than a week, they moved into their new mansion. The children were delighted, and for a moment, Amina felt a sense of normalcy returning. But the villagers couldn't contain their curiosity. Whispers spread quickly. Is it true that the dead man has come back to life? People tried to visit the hotel they had previously stayed in, eager to see the mysterious Chika again. 2 weeks passed with Chika staying quietly with Amina and the children in their new mansion. Life seemed to have settled into a delicate routine. But one morning, Amina woke up to an eerie silence. The bed beside her was empty, and the usual warmth of Chika's presence was gone. She called out for him, her voice trembling, but there was no answer. Panic started to creep into her heart as she searched the mansion from room to room. Chika had disappeared. His belongings remained untouched, and the children asked nervously where their father had gone, sensing something was wrong. Amina's mind raced with questions. Had he gone back to the realm of the dead? Or was this part of the secret she had been warned about? Fear and uncertainty gripped her as she tried to figure out her next move. Amina ran to Mama Chika, her voice shaking. Mama, I can't find Chika again. He's gone, she cried, tears streaming down her face. Mama Chika looked at her with a heavy heart, her eyes filled with sorrow. My child, Chika has gone back, she said softly, taking Amina by the hand. She led Amina to the cemetery where Chika had been buried, the familiar graveyard that held the secrets of his return. Amina's heart pounded as she approached, unable to believe what she was seeing. When she saw the grave, Amina broke down completely, collapsing beside it, her sobs echoing through the quiet cemetery. The children clung to her, frightened by her grief. Mama Chika and Ngozi gently consoled Amina, holding her tightly. It's going to be all right, my daughter, Mama Chika whispered. We will face this together. He may have returned to where he belongs, but your love and the children's safety remain. Amina went back to her mansion and collapsed onto her bed, exhausted from the whirlwind of emotions. She soon drifted into sleep, her mind still heavy with questions about Chika. In her dream, she saw Chika standing before her. Chika, why did you deceive me? She asked, tears welling in her eyes. Chika's expression was calm and gentle. I never deceived you, Amina. You know I was a ghost, he said softly. Amina frowned. Then why did you act so clueless when we got to Anambra? Were you pretending? Chika shook his head. No, when I went to the guardian of the grave to ask for time, he said I could stay with my family and follow you to Anambra. But immediately I reached there, I might not remember my old life. I would remember only you and the children. I accepted the bargain just to be with you. He stepped closer. Don't forget, Amina, I will always be with you. If you need money, I already made arrangements. Tomorrow, my account officer will call you. I've put 30 billion naira in the account for you and the children. Spend it wisely. Amina's eyes widened in disbelief. I don't want to stay in Anambra. I want to live somewhere no one knows my story or who I am, she said firmly. Chika nodded. Then Lagos will be perfect. You can start fresh there, away from the past, but always remember, I am with you in spirit. The following morning, Amina went to Chika's mother. Mama, I've decided, she said, determination in her voice. I'm moving to Lagos with my children to start a new life. Please help us with this transition." That night, Amina had another dream. Chika appeared before her, his eyes filled with warmth and reassurance. "Amina, I will always be with you," he whispered. She woke up with a sense of calm, realizing that even though he had physically left Anambra, his presence would always surround her. The next day, Amina and her children moved to Lagos, starting their new life in a fresh environment far from prying eyes and whispers of the past. As they settled into their new mansion, Amina noticed it felt as if Chika had never left. His presence lingered in every corner, comforting her and the children. Even when she walked through the busy streets of Lagos or tended to the household, Amina felt his unseen protection. It was a quiet reassurance that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and her children were never truly alone. Amina slowly began to rebuild her life in Lagos, embracing her independence and the joy of being with her children. The new mansion became a sanctuary where they could live freely, away from the mysteries and chaos of the past. She enrolled her children in good schools, made new friends, and even started a small business to keep herself engaged. Life began to feel normal, filled with laughter and hope once more. Yet every now and then, Amina would catch a glimpse of Chika in the mansion, a shadow by the window, a familiar smile in the hall, or the comforting warmth of his presence when she felt alone. At first, it startled her, but soon Amina realized it was not something to fear. Chika's spirit remained a gentle guardian, silently watching over their family, protecting them from harm, and reminding them of the love that had transcended even life and death. Amina smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. Life had moved on. The children were safe, and Chika's presence, though invisible, was a constant source of comfort. In that mansion in Lagos, Amina had found her new beginning. And though Chika was gone in body, his spirit lingered. A silent protector, a loving husband, and a father who would always be with them, as if he had never left.